が、
The first question is,
キング氏が指導した公民権運動から、死後30年ということですが、その成果というものですね、それとその限界というものですについて、ファラカン氏ご自身はどういうふうにお考えですか？そう評価できるところとできないところ、今の問題、今につながる問題。
the first question that she has is, now being 30 years from the death of Dr. King, said, how has, well, looking back at those days, where can you see the civil rights movement, and what were its successes, and where did it fail? Where was it not able to achieve its goals in your eyes?
I would not like to talk on the basis of failure, because we are scientists struggling for liberation. And as a scientist, you use certain formula approaches to get the desired results. If you don't get the desired results, you don't classify it as failure. You look at it as you have canceled one approach to solving your problem, and so you continue to press on toward the goal. For all apparent failure in scientific research and development is leading us toward ultimately the truth and the goal that we seek. But using that as a base, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was one of our very great leaders and human beings who desired to make America a more just place for all of her citizens, particularly those who were the most deprived of justice, the black and the poor. After the death of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., there was a blue ribbon, a commission established called the Kerner Commission under the chairmanship of then Governor Otto Kerner, former governor of Illinois. And at the end of their exhaustive study, they said there were two Americas, one black, one white, separate and unequal. 30 years after the death of Dr. King, and 30 years after the impaneling of this Blue Ribbon Commission, they have revisited this question, and their findings are the same. There are two Americas, one black, one white, separate, still unequal. In fact, they have found that in some cities, there's a 50% rate of unemployment among the blacks, which is a horrific number. The health condition of our people has deteriorated greatly. The crime, the violence, the suicide rate among blacks has gone up. The cancer rate is tremendous. So although Dr. King worked to make America a more just and therefore a more joyful society where blacks and poor people are concerned, I would not say that he failed, but the government has failed to implement the guidance that came from the Kerner Commission. The government has failed to implement the principles of justice. The government has failed to uproot in any measure the scourge of this nation, which is racism, that takes many forms, but it is the philosophy of white supremacy. And even though they pay lip service to a multiracial, multicultural society, yet you could never have a truly multiracial, multicultural society that works well together as long as the philosophy of white supremacy is both subtly and overtly the dominating ideology, if you will, or philosophy under which the country operates.
分かった？
ちょっと最後のところだけ結論だけ言ってください。
結論で言うと、要するにその白人至上主義がずっと残ってる間は、多文化多民族の統一された国っていうのはありえないと。
その辺が失敗して。
そうでもそれはキング氏の失敗ではなく、それは政府の失敗であって。
はい。昨年そのミリオンマーチを呼びかけられました。ファラカン氏の下でのその呼びかけというのは日本でも報道されているし、今度スパイク・リーの「ゲット・オン・ザ・バス」という映画が今日本で上映されていて、その中でも非常に若い人たちに呼びかけています。で今なぜその25ミリオンマーチを呼びかけられたのか、そこのところをもう一度説明です。そのワシントン行進、25年後のワシントン行進、同じワシントンでなさったという意味、今の政府に呼びかけるということでよろしいんでしょうか。政府に呼びかけるという意味の大きさっていうのは今のお話でだいぶ分かりますが、その辺のところもう一度お話しいただけたらと。
25 years from the March on Washington, you have called on for the Million Man March, and the Million Man March has been reported greatly, even in Japan. And of course, with Mr. Spike Lee's film Get on the Bus, it was also attention has been pointed towards this Million Man March, and the Japanese know of it. What was the main reason for you to call on to this march at this time?
In the Bible, in the book of Genesis, God creates man and woman and then gives them an assignment of certain duties to perform. In the genesis of a people who are coming out of the darkness of ignorance, although the female is very, very important in the emergence of a people out of slavery or colonialism or darkness of ignorance, without a strong man as a husband, as a father, as a protector of his family and community, the people continue to suffer. Since the black male has been the object of destruction under the philosophy of white supremacy, and it will only be when the black male is restored to the place, to the mentality that God determined for us, that we can begin to emerge out of the darkness of ignorance, the darkness of slavery, and the darkness of an inferior mentality. Black males are non-working for the most part. Black males fill the prisons of America. Black males, 1 out of every 3, is involved in some way with the criminal justice system because of the criminal injustice of the system. So I decided, with the guidance of God, that I would call black men together to call us back to our sacred duty, that we as men may become a beacon of hope for our women who suffer because of our inadequacy, who suffer because we have not been good husbands or good fathers or good providers or good protectors. So I wanted to show that there is a different side to the black male, that we could be better than what we have been pictured as being through these degenerate movies and videos that are shown all over the world of cultural degeneracy. So we called our men together, and by the grace of God, they responded, and our effort was approved by the world community. They saw a different sign of black men that stood together on that mall for 14 hours. There was no smoking, there was no drinking, there were no drugs, there was no fighting, there was not one arrest, and we left the mall almost as clean as we found it. We attempted and we did show the world that the black nation, there's hope for us if we are taught correctly, if we are guided correctly, then we can become a great people to contribute to the development of America rather than a force of destruction of the country. May I say to you both that you may ask of me any question that comes to your heart or your mind that you feel your readers may want to know about. And if there are follow-up questions on anything that I say that you need further clarity on, don't hold back from asking those questions.
もし質問があれば何でも言ってくださいと、どうしてもここを明確にしてほしいというものがあればそうしてくださいって、
絞った方がいいってことかねしら、今アメリカの国内でその黒人の人の中でもミドルクラスとアンダークラスが、分離している問題が非常に大きな二分化が進んでいると。この問題の解決というものをどうするかということについてファラカンさんのご意見を聞きたいです。昨日私たちはウエストサイド、ノースサイドに行って来てそのアンダークラスの人たちの状況というのを見てきたんですが、はい。
Yesterday, we went to the west side and saw how the gap between the underclass and the middle class, especially in the African American community, seems to be widening at this stage, day by day. Where do you see the solution, or how do you feel you can fix the gap that is widening there?
We believe that in order to show success to the world that America has changed, she desired to create a broader middle class as a sign of black advancement. the same time that we can say that the middle class has expanded, the poverty of the poor has also expanded. So the middle class is created as a buffer between the establishment and the angry and embittered masses of our people. What is the solution? This middle class are mainly professionals, business people, intellectuals. They too are dissatisfied, and they too are angry because they have met in corporate America what is called a glass ceiling, where they can only rise so high and no further, no matter how talented they are, no matter what they bring to the endeavor of their corporation. They feel that their worth is not appreciated. They're never given the same amount of money as their white counterparts, and so they are angry, embittered, and dissatisfied, even as the black masses are. What is the solution? Out of the American economy, we as black people are blessed, according to a Georgia University study, to get $438 billion out of this economy, which makes us a very rich people, even though individually we are poor, collectively we are rich. The Japanese and the Asians, but I focus on the Japanese since this is a Japanese publication. You have learned the value of hard work. You've learned the value of saving, and you've learned the value of investment. When you can save 15 to 20 to 25 to 30% of what you earn, then you have greater investment capability, possibility in the future of your country and the future of your people. Black people, being a people who are not as productive as we could be or should be, we are a consumer nation. So we buy and buy and buy. And even among our professionals, we are maybe 3 or 4 paychecks away from hard times, because we see the good things of life which we want to make life better, and so we go into debt to get these good things of life. And if you look at our salary, which may be 40,000, 50, 60,000, your salary should be the diameter, and what you do with your salary should be the circumference of your activity. If the diameter of your paycheck is $60,000 a year, then $100,000 spending puts you out in space. And most of the American people are in debt, so they live beyond their means. But if we could, through connecting this black professional intellectual class as a head to the body, which is the foot and the hands, the poor. If we could connect these two, then the intelligence, the wisdom, the experience of this group, guiding this group into doing for self, then we could become an economic and political force within America. We could be responsible for ending racism. Our problem is we have looked to white people to end racism, which they cannot do of themselves or by themselves. Because if a white person feels that they are superior because of their whiteness, and then they go into the black community, which is called a ghetto, and see us doing nothing, drunk, selling dope, talking loud, cussing, fighting, our children unclothed, our homes dirty and filthy, we contribute to the view that we are inferior. But if we, and I'm speaking now of the Nation of Islam, and our program reaches our people where we clean them up, make them clean up their environment, strengthen their marriages and family life, make them prudent in their buying and prudent in saving, thus giving them something to invest to create an economic base for political power as well as economic power. If this that we represent can be expanded among our people, then we can end racism, because you can't sit with me in an environment such as this and say, well, you could say I'm talking to a middle class black person, but this doesn't belong to me. This belongs to the community that I serve. But when you talk to a black man who is productive, who is not only intelligent but respectful, courteous, is committed to the struggle of his people, you can't go away saying you met an inferior human being. So if we can make all of our people like this, we destroy the myth of white supremacy. We begin to destroy the attitude that racism and white supremacy produces, and we allow us as black and white human beings to begin to relate to each other on a level of humanity. So, and that's why I said you cannot destroy racism and white supremacy on your own. You need help from us to do it. Coming back to the Japanese. I've always loved the Japanese people from a little boy. Even when there was war with the United States, my feeling was toward the Japanese. I can't explain it. I've loved the Japanese from a little boy. And whenever I got a chance to meet Japanese people, and I found them enamored with Western culture and leaving the beauty of their own culture, I chided them, because to me the beauty of Japan and the beauty of Asia is the beauty of her culture, the greatness of her history, the beauty of what she brings to the whole cultural setting of the races and the different ethnic groups. What Japan brings is marvelous. So I say that to say this, that when the war was over and the Japanese were disallowed the right to build weapons of war and build an army, then the Japanese could plow their money into developing their economy. So the Japanese began to develop in a way where you can't say when you go to Japan, I'm dealing with an inferior people who are yellow or brown. You can't have that racist mentality in the face of Japanese productivity. When you listen to Midori play the violin as well as any European, you can't say, I am the best because I am white, when I listen to Midori, when I listen to Sarah Chang, and I listen to these young ones coming up, white supremacy, we have to now readjust our thinking. And this is why the advancement of Africa, the advancement of India, the advancement of Asia is helping Europe and America readjust the sick philosophy that has caused them to be oppressors all over the world, and now it gives us a chance in the new millennium to relate to each other as human beings. I don't know whether I wandered off the point,
Point?
but I think I made the point
I think you did.
of what we could do as a solution.
Yes.
あの
で今の大体分かった要するにだから、
うん
経済的基盤を自分らで作ってその白人の偏見値の白人の仕事だけではの思想だけでは直すことができないと、だからその経済的に
Yeah.
豊かになって自尊心を持つことによって、そこで初めて、対等に渡り歩けると。で対等に渡り歩ける段階でそこで初めて白人の、思想っていうのはその偏見の白人至上主義の思想が崩れると。で日本
がその点でいい例でやつを
いい例になったと。
しかしその今ですね声として例えばアメリカ世界でね白人の人もこう2つのクラスに分かれて、結局その単にその人種だけじゃなくってその、やっぱりその層が白人も含めて層が二分化してしまっているという問題も一方であると思うんですよね。でだからその全てのその責任を白人に押し付けるわけにもいかないと、人種だけの問題じゃない経済の問題とでそういう声もあるということです。それについてちょっと。
There's also a voice that says not only is the gap between the middle class and the underclass widening in the African American community, but also in the white community, and that
例えばアファーマティブアクションなんかは、白人の人もすごく恩恵を被っていると、ちょっと白人の女性一番被っている白人の人、弱い人だ。
However, even beyond a racial problem, there's this very deep problem of poverty. And of course, with let's say affirmative action, probably some of the people who have been getting the most benefits are possibly the women, possibly even white American women are also we're getting benefits from that program. それで
全ての責任を白人にその押し付ける、
受
け付けることもできない人種の問題ではないという声も高まっている。声もある。
What do you feel about the voice that says that the problem isn't entirely a racial problem, but the problem lies somewhere else?
Race is a very major part of the problem. Greed of a few to control the wealth of the world is the other side of that problem. It goes past race, past color. This effort at globalization, to me, is an effort of a few to master the wealth of the earth, not for the sake of enriching the poor, but for the sake of enriching the rich at the expense of the poor. Any benefit that comes to women from any effort that is made is a blessing to humanity. Women have suffered in every society on this earth. So any time some residual effect of struggle can benefit a woman, then it benefits a nation. because to benefit a man is to benefit an individual. When you benefit a woman, you benefit a family, you benefit a nation. So the advancement of women is the key marker in the advancement of freedom, of justice, and of equality. If you really want to see a society that is making progress, watch the woman. If the woman is making progress, the society is making progress. If the woman is oppressed and suppressed, the society is not doing what it could do. So the advancement of women all over the earth is a sign that things will be better in the future. The more educated the woman is, the more she educates her children, then the stronger the male, the stronger the female, the wiser the male, the wiser the female, because the woman is the one who shapes them. So I'm not in any way negative about any advancement that women get through affirmative action or any other action. But this economic problem, due to the greed of the few, will cause more and more bitterness and anger among the poor. And as race begins to diminish and poverty becomes the common denominator that unites people, then the poor will overthrow the rich. They will rise up against the rich. They will kill the rich. The question is, what will they supplant the system that is so unjust with? And that is why I believe today the return to true religion and the advancement of the true principles of the teachings of Jesus Christ and Muhammad and Moses and all of the prophets will ensure that as a more just world comes into existence, it will not be replaced by a group that will carry out the same wickedness that we all have suffered under.
ね、今の簡単に訳すると、確かにこの経済的な問題っていうのが非常に大きいと。で、ものすごく少数の人間が世界全土を経済的にコントロールしようとするっていうもので、それは確かに大きな問題になっていると。女性の向上でアファーマティブアクションに関しては、女性の向上がそこで得られるということは人類全体の向上であると。でその国が前に進んでいるかどうかっていうのは、女性の地位ではっきりすることだと。だけど要するに非常に悲しいことに、その人種間の統合を一番しているものが貧困であるならば、その貧困ということによってね、それがその人種間の共通点になるのであるならば、この貧しい人たちは必ずしも立ち上がり、でお金を持っているものを乗り越え乗り越えやっていこうとする。ここで問題になってくるのは、じゃあその今までのシステムの代わりに何を置くかであると。でそこでもっと道徳的な宗教をベースとした、システムを入れるのが必要であろうと。
先日のそのファイナルコールを読んで、リビアの訪問、日本で今私インターネットでファイナルコールを読んで、リビアの訪問をはじめ、その世界各国のイスラムの諸国を回って、例えばそのリビアカダフィ大佐と連帯ですね、特にその第三世界との連帯でを重視されていることを私非常に興味深く思ってます。というのは、そのアメリカの外交政策っていうのは割とその世界の憲兵、みたいな意味があって、そういうところにその反論をねしている国々があると。この間の湾岸でもそうです。でそういったところにその行って共感をメッセージを送られると。アメリカからは非常に攻撃される、ファラカンさん自身が攻撃されるかもしれないけど、そういったものについては非常に世界の中で共感を持っている人々もいると思うんですが、そこのその あえてああいうその外交生活をされる意味っていうんですか、その辺についてお尋ねしたいと。国際連帯ね。というか日本。
ちょっと待って。So often we hear the voice that many countries around the world are tired of America being the watchdog or the guard dog of the world, or the attack dog that goes and fights wars and other people's fights. But recently you've made a trip to Libya and to many Islamic countries around the world, and are putting a lot of effort into going, especially to the countries that where their voice have been shut out by the American society. そして日本が、
日本についてもそういった外交ですね。日本はアメリカにいつも追従しています。
So how do you believe the way that America goes through its diplomatic actions should change? You know, Japan always ends up tagging along to what America does as a country, but what do you think should change, and what are the voices that you heard in all those countries that you traveled?
That's a big question. The answer's big too. I'll try to be as succinct as possible. In all of the countries in which I visited, I found people who are slaves. Some don't even recognize that they are slaves. They're rich slaves. They're powerful politician slaves. Fearful of the future of emerging nations in a unipolar world. America, as the greatest nation in the history of the world, sits at the top of this pyramid, almost as a capstone, a pyramid within herself. No nation in the history of the world has occupied the position that America now holds. I talk to the people at the bottom of this pyramid. They all want friendship with America. There's no nation that does not want to be friendly to this only remaining superpower. But they are frightened when those at the bottom see that America has clawed her way to the top, and they want to come up the ladder too, but they see thunderbolts coming down at them, or lightning bolts and thunderclaps coming down at them from the IMF, from the World Bank, from the World Trade Organization, from the Federal Reserve, that if you get out of line with what we in America think, what happened to Iraq can happen to you. What we're doing to these quote-unquote rogue nations that we have determined without giving them any hearing or any due process. We've declared these nations to be rogues, and therefore we sanction them, we freeze their funds in our banks, and we make it difficult for them to survive because we don't like their leadership. So there's fear, there is worry, there is they don't see where these emerging nations have any real future. America, at the same time, there's a debate raging. How should we carry ourselves in this position that no nation before us has ever achieved? We are the great military power, the great economic power. Our cultural power spreads all over the world. Our science and technology. This sometimes produces an arrogance that blinds us to reality, and we stumble over little things. So the debate is raging. Should we behave in a manner that says, you either do what we say or we'll make you suffer? Or should we use our tremendous advantage in science, technology, and space research and development to help the little nations, the smaller nations, the weaker nations to realize their potential, or should we threaten them and suck the strength of their economies into a quote-unquote world economy that they will never be a part of? And so my answer is to America. Who makes up America? There are Japanese Americans, Chinese Americans, Korean Americans, Philippine Americans, German Americans, Italian Americans, Greek Americans, French Americans, Russian Americans. They are black or African Americans. Well, now, tell me something. If we make this great superpower, we, not white people alone, but we make America, then her domestic policy will reflect her foreign policy. What is America's feeling toward the Japanese Americans, the Chinese Americans, the Asian Americans, the Native Americans, the Arab Americans, the African Americans, or the Jewish Americans, or the French Americans? How's your policy? Is it fair? Is it balanced? If it's not balanced toward us inside the house, how in the world could it ever be fair to the countries that gave America its citizens to make America what America is? America owes a debt to the entire world because the entire world has given America her greatness through the citizens of America that have helped to make this country as great as she is. So the people at the top shouldn't be talking in this arrogant and wicked way toward other nations of the earth. We should be recognizing our debt to the world and organizing the industrial nations to help us pay our debt to the poor nations that gave us their tired, their poor, their huddled masses yearning to breathe free. I think the tempest, those tempest tossed, send them to me. Well, they've sent them. What are you doing with them? What do you do to the mother countries that produce them? America's record is horrendous. Sorry. Where Africa's concerned, horrendous. Where the Caribbean, Central, South America concerned, horrendous. And America's record is improving where Asia is concerned because Asia's growth, development is forcing a change. But the recent destruction of Asian economies is going to come back to haunt America. this envy. You know, the Japanese, the Chinese, the Koreans, Indonesia, Malaysia, the Philippines, their economy is growing in the Pacific Rim, and people saying, look at this Asian tiger. Look at how great it's becoming. And envy. So you manipulate currencies that are tied to the dollar, which is tied to nothing. Oh my God. Well, if Korea now, with a $60 billion, I'm sorry, I'm going far.
Go ahead, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Korea with $60 billion bailout. The Koreans can't buy Western products like she was buying during the time when her currency was so great. Now she's got to devalue her currency so you can buy Korean goods cheaper, but the Koreans have to get more and more and more of their money to buy Western product. So you force Korea to become more self-productive of the things that she consumes. Japan the same. The Philippines the same. So if these Asian economies are forced to become more productive of the things that they consume, America, then where will you sell your products? So it's going to soon come back home. As Malcolm said, those chickens, they very well come home to roost. We are a global village, and we should behave. America should behave as a blessed country. You know, America has destabilized countries all over the world. She never talked about it publicly. Man, look how arrogant the leaders have become. We ought to kill that Saddam Hussein. I mean, how could government people speak in contravention of U.S. law and international law openly? We're going to destabilize this country and get rid of their leader. Oh, what kind of way is that for this country to perform? She says, well, you know, Nigeria is bad in her human rights. Well, America, wait a minute. Does Cuba have the right to be communist? That's a question. And if the Cuban people are not revolting against communism, what business is it of yours? Why would you blockade them from getting food and medicine? Is not food a human right? Medicine a human right? The right to trade, is that not a right of a nation? And you talk about you're the guardian of human rights. Oh, America is becoming pitiful. And unless sanity is reintroduced, not only in America, but in Japan, because Japan is like the echo of America. America says, oh, Japan says, oh, no. Japan should be Japan. And when Japan disagrees with America, stand up. Otherwise, what good are you to the human community if you become an echo of that which is unjust when the justice or the judgment comes against the injustice of America? Japan will suffer right along with America. So Japan must not do this. Japan, we expect better from Japan than this. We expect Japan to be a voice for the oppressed, a voice for the underprivileged, a voice for the weak, not Japan to be the second motion to the wicked policies of the United States government. I'm through with that. I'm sorry.
いやいや全くその通りで。
She agrees with you.
写真は撮らなくてもいいですか？
写真撮らなくちゃいけないけど。
インタビュー中ももし。 話がちょっとまた国内の話のなります。その若者についてというのは、日本でも非常にラップというのが若者の中で、流行りました。でそれはそのネーション・オブ・イスラムの紹介っていうのはもう日本の入ってきたのもラップの音楽から一番初めに入ってきてると。でこの30年間ですね、キングが死んで30年間そのコミュニティの中でもジェネレーションギャップが進行していると思うと。昨日そのウエストサイドに行った時もノースサイドでも昔なら近所の人がその送ってくれたのにもうアメリカの中でもそのコミュニティの会話がなくなってるっていうような話を聞いた。そこについてそのネーション・オブ・イスラムの、具体的な活動とかファラカンさん氏が呼びかけられることについて、特にそこでネーション・オブ・イスラムの活動っていうのは有意義だと思うんですが、そこのつくについて詳しくちょっともう少し詳しくお話しいただけないでしょうか。
So going back to the internal within the United States, says that within the last 30 years, it seems that there's been a very large generation gap within communities. Where yesterday, when we were in the West Side, we were talking with people, and we heard stories of, when we were children, adults from the neighborhood would scold us if, we did something bad, and we'd get home and we'd get scolded again by the parents, but it was one community as a family. But now you feel that the sense of community, the sense of family within the community is degenerating. One question is, how do you think, or what is the Nation of Islam doing to bring these values back? Another one is through music. The very first voice of the Nation of Islam, that the first message or the name Nation of Islam that we heard in Japan was through rap music.
特にファラカンさんは今の私の父の世代で、だから若い人についてどういうふうに若い人をこう捕まえるか、そこについての特別なやっぱアイディアがお持ちや、ヒップカルチャーとかね。
So then also, he said, you are the age of her father, and said, as from a father's eye, looking down at the younger generation, how do you feel you can motivate the young people to come back to build community?
Well, there is indeed a gender gap that is fulfillment of prophecy, as well as by design by the forces of evil. In your culture and in most of the cultures of the world, the elderly are venerated, respected, because after having lived life 60, 70, 80 years, their life experience has taught them a wisdom that should be passed on to the young, that the young do not make the mistakes that the elders made to learn. So if you make a mistake, it should be a new mistake. But when a force disrupts that continuity of the elder being a guide and a teacher to the young, when that continuity is broken, then the youth are not able to guide themselves. Therefore, other forces come in to help guide them in a direction that is destructive of the youth, and they become a force either to be used in war or a destructive social force. Now, how does this happen, and why does God permit something like this to happen, and what is the way out of this? Okay? Now, in America, there is this breach. It is also in Japan. It is also now in the Asian cultures, which have been the best in showing how the elders and the youth connect. In African society, it has always been there, the elders teaching the young and the young honoring the elder. When we did not have television, when we did not have telephone, when we did not have these modern advancements, we had each other. Now that we have radio, television, satellite, something is happening to us by design. See, when you and I, when you were young, your dad, if he's my age, he was the breadwinner in the house. Mom stayed home and looked after the children. Dad worked hard, came home, mom served him. You as a daughter helped mom, and there was this sense of family. When you go out into the street, you couldn't behave just anyway, because as you may be your father's daughter, your father's neighbor also sees you as a part of the extended family, so they would chide you if you were wrong, tell your parent, and you did not want to dishonor your parents, so it was shame. Well, that's the way it was with me coming up. It may have been with you, although you're much younger than I, but this is the way we came up. But now, television and the breakdown, the purposeful breaking up of family through economic pressures. See, in those days, one person in the house was the breadwinner. Now it's two. When you have two people out of the house working, what are you working for? I'm working to pay the rent. I not only have one car, I have two, so I got to pay 2 car notes. I got to pay insurance. Oh God, I got to have health insurance. I got to pay that, you know. So if you look at all the bills, mommy got to work extra hours. Daddy got to work extra hours. What's happening to the children? Oh, well, the latchkey children, they let themselves in the house. They sit in front of the TV. What are they feeding on? Oh, it's MTV. Oh, it's women shaking and dancing. It's filth. It's love. It's things that mommy is not monitoring because she's not there. Daddy's not monitoring. He's not there. And in the black community, when these little girls who are eating food, McDonald's, Wendy's, Burger King, and other fast foods, where people who are producing the foods are not careful. You know, they don't care. They want to rush the food to the marketplace, so they feed hormones to the chicken, hormones to the beef, hormones to the pigs, hormones to the lambs, so they swell up bigger than normal, faster than normal, get them to the marketplace, get the money. So then we come, we eat the meat. Now you got a 9-year-old girl with a bosom bigger than her mama's, and she has a menses at 9, and she's got a Barbie doll in one hand, and she's got a sanitary napkin in the other hand. Her hips are spreading, and she's still a child, but her body says she's a young woman. Now, mom is not there. Daddy's not there. They've got a make money. She turns on the radio. Of course she does, because I like my music. So what's on the radio? What are you hearing? Songs of filth, songs of sex, songs that stimulate the sexual appetite of male and female. Now, if you got a community where people are not working, the men are not working, what are the men doing? They're on the corner watching these young girls come home from school, unprotected, unguided. So somebody approaches the young girl for sex. So you have 10-year-olds having babies, 11-year-olds, 12-year-olds, 13-year-olds having babies. So how do you combat this? Because this cultural degeneracy is destroying Japan, is destroying us. When Russia was a closed society, they had more moral strength than they have now. So now this free market, the democracy, and the invasion of this culture is now destroying the moral fiber of Russia. That's why Iran does not want satellite. They don't want your television. They don't want your filth. They don't want what you have become a major purveyor of, so that they can protect their society from this social degeneration that we see. So how do we get around it? In the Nation of Islam, when we believe similarly, I become your brother, you are my sister. If you are unmarried, your children are my nieces, my nephew, his family. So in the mosque or in the nation, all of us are sisters and brothers. So all of us are aunts and uncles. So when your child is out of order, that's my child too. So I get your child in order, then tell you. We begin to reestablish the moral, cultural values, and we try to create entertainment for our children. I mean, we're struggling, though. I mean, it is a struggle, because our children are fighting those forces just like all the other children, and sometimes we're successful and sometimes we fail. But until and unless a more sane way is exhibited by corporate America, by the music industry, by government, then we will feel this loss between the young and the old. Now, I will say a last point on that is, I believe that God has allowed this to happen, to take the youth away from their parents, because the parents now have surrendered to the world and its powers. So by the youth being separated from the parents, they can be victimized by satanic forces, but now they await the voice of the Messiah. So if you notice, you mentioned that you didn't know about the nation, you got it through rap. How did the rappers get it? Because Farrakhan is a voice to the young, the disinherited. Farrakhan becomes the father that they never had, the teacher that they long for. And so even though they may not fully adopt the lifestyle of Farrakhan at this point, they identify with me. And they come to my table and they call me the father that they never had. And I'm honored greatly by this. But, you know, Reverend Sun Myung Moon, who is very popular in Korea and in Japan and in other places, he talks about true parents and true children and true family values. I think this is the only way that we can restore a sense of community. We have to become true parents. We have to become better, because the need now is for us to be better than our fathers and mothers were, not worse. And you can't be better without a better knowledge. So this is how we fight that trend, is by putting knowledge among the youth. And I can call them when nobody else can call the rappers. By the grace of God, I can call them to sit around the table to discuss the future of our people, to show them how valuable and important they are in the struggle for liberation. I'm not yet satisfied that they're moving as fast as they can, but I'm satisfied that they have made steps to correct the cultural degeneracy that they have been purveyors of, many of them. So.
そろそろ時間があるんだけど、どうしますか？
ちょっと聞きたいことがまだあります。一つはですね、よく今聞かれるラップ、バイオリンはまだ弾かれるのかな。
So do you still play the violin?
Every day. Every day. I awaken every morning between 2 and 4. And I practice through the night. And I work through the day. And one of my desires, hopefully by the year 2000, I'd like very much to perform the Beethoven, the Mendelssohn, the Bruch, and the Tchaikovsky Violin Concerto with the Tokyo Symphony, with the Beijing, Cairo, Havana, London, Paris, Berlin, even Israel. I believe that music is the universal language, and I believe that truth, properly spoken, can be like music and bring people together all over the world to our common struggle. So, since people don't expect me to play the violin, and many, many, many do not know how dear the violin is to me, I want to concertize in the year 2000 in different parts of the world as part of an outreach to human beings, that after I play my music, I'd like to talk about the problems, human problems, and give musical solutions. That if we can make an oboe, a clarinet, a flute, a bassoon, trumpet, play together in an orchestra with timpanis, with piano, with violins, cello, and viola. If we can put all of these different instruments together and make beautiful music, certainly we ought to be able to put human beings together, that our life can be more beautiful than what it presently is. And that is my hope. I hope one day to visit Japan. I passed through Japan. I was in the airport in Tokyo. But because of the propaganda against me, that I was anti-Semitic, that I was anti-white, when I tried to get a visa to come to Japan, and the Japanese Muslims wanted to receive me, the government of Japan told me that I would have to sign a paper saying that I would be obedient to the laws of Japan, then they would let me in. And at that time I felt insulted because I am obedient to the laws of the United States. I would never come to Japan to disrespect Japanese law. So I hope one day to be able to visit Japan and meet the people
I hope so.
that I have always admired and loved. And my feeling for Japan has never changed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
一つですね、ちょっとまた再度ないですけど、若いそのヒップカルチャーなんかも聞かれるんですか？
Says, he said, do you also listen to music of the young people? So it says,
Of course.
Of course. 誰が好き？
Yes.
特に。
I listen to all forms of music because through music you understand something about the movement of human beings. So I listen to jazz. I love the classics, but I listen to jazz, pop, blues, rap. I listen to the music of the Arab countries and Asian music as well. And if you're a lover of music, you like to study the music of the nations and the people. Yeah.
それからですね、最後ちょっと最後ではない国内外のその主流のメディアについてなんですが、その日本もそうですけどアメリカ国内、それから日本もそうですけど、ファラカン氏は影響力が非常におありなのにかかわらずその黙殺していると、そのアフロアメリカンに対する報道についての意見っていうのをこれは、我々の
I have a question about the media, and it seems that media in America and also the media in Japan is trying to shut out your voice or your message or your influence. What do you feel about that?
I'm grateful for the media, even though their opinion of me has largely been negative. Without the media, I would not be known in other parts of the world. So no matter how negative the media has been to me, I'm grateful to the media, and I know that in time, as they get to know me better, they will write better, they will reflect better. I was recently at the 75th anniversary of Time magazine, because I happened to be on the cover of Time magazine in 1994. They asked me, would I come? At first I thought no, because I didn't see how I would be appreciated in that kind of setting. And so I thought maybe I shouldn't go, because on the cover of Time, I was shown as the minister of rage, not the minister of passion for truth and justice and right. Okay, so I decided I would go. And I did go, and I'm glad I went. Because in that setting, I met people, and I knew that the media had not yet destroyed people's respect for me. The CEO of Time saw me, came and said, I'm very happy and honored that you accepted our invitation. And he took my wife and myself and my party through the Radio City that they had transformed into a beautiful hall for a banquet. And he was very kind and gracious to me. When I got in, I ran into Senator Glenn, and we shared a few light moments, but he didn't say, oh, this anti-Semite, I won't. He with a broad smile. And I stepped a few paces and I saw Sharon Stone, and we shook hands, and she smiled and was happy to see and meet Louis Farrakhan as I was happy to meet her. I moved a few steps further, and there was my brother Muhammad Ali, and we hugged and kissed, and then I turned and there was Lauren Bacall, and we shook hands. And then I looked and there was Henry Kissinger, and we shook hands and took pictures together. And I moved through, and people said, oh, there's Farrakhan, it's Farrakhan. There's Kevin Costner. Hi, Louis, how are you? Well, then, when I'm in the company of giants in all these fields of human endeavor, and Jews and Gentiles, black and white and Asian that were there, they all showed a great measure of respect. In the crowning part of the night, of course, former President Gorbachev spoke and President Clinton spoke. But after it was over, they told me that Billy Graham was there. And I was sitting at a table with David Frost and other executives of Time magazine, and got along beautifully. So after the program was over, I went to meet Billy Graham, whom I have admired for many, many, many years. So when Mr. Graham saw me, he was greeting Muhammad Ali and his wife and some others. But when he saw me, he looked and he reached his hand over and moved through those people, not only to shake my hand, but to embrace me and to kiss me. Well, when you're kissed by Billy Graham, and you know he's male and a righteous man, I returned the kiss. And he said, I want to talk with you, Minister Farrakhan. I said, you know, Reverend, I want to talk with you. So maybe before long we shall meet. I'm saying that to say, I have no stones to throw at the media. I think the media wanted to beat up on Louis Farrakhan. They felt that I was a bad guy, and if I'm a bad guy, make me look bad all over the world so that people will see me as a bad guy. But God is blessing me every day to emerge more and more and more. And the Million Man March, people looked at it that was produced from my heart. And they listened to my speech and they said, well, I don't know, how could he be as bad as they say he is? And now people want to meet me, and I am, who I am, but I'm not who they say I am. And so I salute the media, and I hope that I will help to make the media more responsive to the needs of community, less rubber stamped by forces that wish to shape world opinion a certain way to get people to react on the basis of truth mixed with lies. The media, to me, has a sacred responsibility in any democracy, and that is to do the painstaking research to find the truth. Because people function best when they are best informed. And to use the media to manipulate the gullibility and the ignorance of people is a crime of great magnitude. And so the media, to me, has a sacred responsibility. Find the truth, print it, and let the chips fall. I salute the media, and I hope that I will help to make the media more responsive to the needs of community, less rubber stamped by forces that wish to shape world opinion a certain way to get people to react on the basis of truth mixed with lies. The media, to me, has a sacred responsibility in any democracy, and that is to do the painstaking research to find the truth. Because people function best when they are best informed. And to use the media to manipulate the gullibility and the ignorance of people is a crime of great magnitude. And so the media, to me, has a sacred responsibility. Find the truth, print it, and let the chips fall where they may.
そろそろ写真撮らないとやばいんだけど。
ですね、メディアの最後の質問になると思う。メディアのね、
We have 15 minutes.
OK。メディアで言うと映画も非常に重要なですけど、ネーション・オブ・イスラムが今の日本に一番知られるようになったきっかけっていうのは92年のスパイク・リーが撮ったマルコム X の映画だと思うんですよ。で映画についてそれご覧になってたら、感想、それから、やはりマルコム X は日本では非常に映画以来ポピュラーな人になったと。でそこの、それについて彼についてのファラガサさんの、意見っていうのは多分日本の人はみんな聞きたいと思ってると思うので、そこもちょっとお尋ねしたいです。
This will be the last question before we take photos. I'm looking at the lights, and the light was so beautiful. But said in Japan, probably the biggest,
メディアとして、
as you know, the media, the biggest opportunity for the name of the Nation of Islam to be spread throughout Japan was through Spike Lee's movie Malcolm X. And through that movie, Malcolm X became a very, very popular figure in Japan. And the question is, if you have seen the movie, what did you think of it? And what is your opinion towards Malcolm X, and how do you view his life work?
Thank you very much. The last question, but it's a very, very important question. First, Spike Lee, I think, made a very bold attempt to represent Malcolm X from the basis of his research, but naturally reflecting his bias toward Malcolm and away from the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. But given that natural bias that every human being has, I think he did a great thing in producing this epic film on the life of Malcolm X. That is my feeling toward that movie. And I think the movie went a long way in helping people to understand aspects of Malcolm's life, how Islam is taught by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad changed his life, and then the unfortunate circumstances that led to his untimely death. By my being a student under both the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and Malcolm X, and by Malcolm's being my mentor and the big brother that I needed, or the father that I never had, that strong male image that I needed, I think I am in a better position than most to speak to the essence of the controversy, which is too short a time in this interview to get into all of the dynamics of this. But suffice it to say this: I loved Malcolm as much or even more than life, because I saw him as the greatest helper of the man I love, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Malcolm taught me how to represent him, how to represent truth. Malcolm taught me how to be a man. Malcolm taught me the moral discipline that a man needs if he's going to be a good leader. Malcolm was the most time-conscious man that I met in my life. He never was late for an appointment, and he would leave us if he told us to be ready by a certain time. He was a wonderful example to a young man like myself who came from show business to this ascetic kind of life. Unfortunately, there would come a time when he would find himself at variance with his teacher. In Islamic tradition, according to the Holy Quran, a man is allowed to have more than one wife. This is a tradition in Africa. It is a tradition among the Native Americans. The great ones always had more than one wife. It is a tradition among the prophets of God that all of them had more than one wife. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad, in fulfilling that aspect of the life of the prophets, but yet knowing that we as a people were very promiscuous, how then could he teach us out of promiscuity and parade wives in front of a community that was immature in its ability to accept this aspect of his life without its corrupting us in the way he had taught us to live? When Malcolm went against the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, that hurt all of us, but me in particular, because he taught me the love and the honor and the respect of the teacher, which I never lost. And because I understood by God's grace this dynamic in the teacher's life, I could not side with Malcolm in his condemnation of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And so I, in defense of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, attacked my mentor. And this, unfortunately, played into a bigger picture, which was the picture of the U.S. government to destroy the movement by splitting Elijah Muhammad and Malcolm and causing a fight to take place between the followers of Malcolm and the followers of Elijah Muhammad, which would then kill two birds with one stone and destroy an organization that the Federal Bureau of Investigation had at the top of its list as an entity during the counterintelligence program, along with the Panther Party, along with even the NAACP and other black organizations that should be weakened. The Nation of Islam should be one destroyed. So I look at Malcolm as a man that has died that I might live, died in a sense to show me, to teach me, to give me an example of how and what I should do to protect my life when I would be at variance with the son of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. You've never seen in the public Louis Farrakhan ever attack the son of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, though we have variance and a disagreement. But I would not do that. Nor when I was with Reverend Jackson and he was forced by circumstances to repudiate me publicly. I never went in the public and attacked my brother, but I said we all should remain solidly behind Reverend Jackson, and I bowed out. Why did I do that? Because I learned the painful lesson from the tragic death of Malcolm X. And I never wanted to be a party to creating an atmosphere that could cause the loss of life of any human being with whom I have a disagreement. So I thank God for the life of Malcolm X, because his life truly has helped to make my life what it is. And above all, I thank God for the life of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, whom I continue to draw inspiration from to do all that I do. At first, when you asked me, to speak in this interview on the life and times of Dr. Martin Luther King, I didn't feel that it is my place as one who is a follower of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad to make commentary on Dr. King when so many of his followers are alive and doing so well. And so I declined. But as time went on and you were so wonderfully persistent, I thought, well, maybe I should tell you what I feel about Dr. King. So I'd like to close this interview by going back to Dr. King. You know, we were at odds with Dr. King because Dr. King preached integration and Honorable Elijah Muhammad and Malcolm preached separation. Dr. King met the Honorable Elijah Muhammad some months before he was assassinated. And those two men from Georgia sat together like two genuine brothers. They had their disagreements, but they had a meeting and they were talking. And some months later, Dr. King was assassinated. When both men, now great teachers, are gone, the students of the teachers who were so enamored with their teacher and couldn't see the value of the other, now that both teachers are off the scene physically, we have a chance to evaluate them. I have come to love Dr. King with an intense love, because of the greatness of God that I found in him and his love for humanity, his love for this country, and his desire to use his great skill and brilliance as an orator and a thinker to try to set America right. For that, I take my hat off to Dr. King. He was more than a man that had a dream. He was a visionary. He was a man of extraordinary capacities. And to denigrate him because of what is considered a human frailty by some is, to me, not to recognize the transcendent power of God that moves through human beings in spite of our weaknesses. Now, I love Beethoven. I don't care about how many women Beethoven slept with. I really don't care if he had a bad temper. But I know that the wisdom and the Spirit of God was in that man. How do you know it, Farrakhan? I know it from the transcendent nature of his music. He's been dead 200 years, but he lives to affect lives and sweeten the lives of human beings all over the world in every generation since his passing. So to me, then how could you trivialize the greatness of this man by pointing to the fact that he did this or he did that? So you can't trivialize Dr. King or Elijah Muhammad in that way, or the prophets of God. So Dr. King, as I listened to some of his speeches and listened to his disciples, I see a great man. I see a man who put forth a thesis. I see Elijah Muhammad, a great man who put forth a thesis. And I see that Warith Deen Muhammad, the son of Elijah Muhammad, came after his father to put forth an antithesis of his father's thesis. And I see others putting forth an antithesis of Dr. King's thesis. And I see Christians, Muslims, and Jews fighting and arguing, and Buddhists and Hindus and Taoists and Confucianists and Baha'i and all of these different faith traditions, each one seeing themselves as having the answer. But what I see is that there's a common thread that runs through all the great religions and all the great men and women. And I see my role is not putting forth a thesis, but synthesizing the best in all so that we can bring together the streams of King, Malcolm, Martin, W.E.B. Du Bois, Castro, Che Guevara, and all the great ones, so that we can bring humanity together as a whole. Dr. King's legacy will be, from my vantage point, he was as patriotic as George Washington that founded this nation. And he was better than any president because he fought for justice. And it is only when justice is established that a nation's perpetuity is also established. And so that man fought for the perpetuity of what is called America. And for that, history will be kind and generous to him, and history, I believe, will be kind and generous to Malcolm and, of course, to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And if I do my work well, if God is pleased to grant me 10 or 20 more years of life, I believe in the next 20 years of my life, I will bring human beings together all over this planet, no matter what their color, their national origin, their ethnic background, because there is a common denominator that causes all of us to vibrate. And if we can find it in truth and make it like music, the whole human family can vibrate to truth, and we can expel racism and white supremacy and sexism and materialism and a sick form of nationalism, and bring the whole human family to self and to God. So I thank you very much for this
Thank you very much.
interview.
Thank you very much.
And now, for the pictures.
Yes.
If you can possibly.
She wants to say
Yeah, okay.
something.
日本にぜひいらっしゃってほしいと。
Said she definitely wants you to come to Japan.
Do you go back to Japan from here?
Yes, we go back
Oh,
tomorrow.
you go back
Yes.
tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
You also?
Yes.
You live in Japan?
I grew up, I was raised in Japan, grew up in Japan. So I only come back to America maybe once every 2, 3, 4 years. So I'm more Japanese than I feel I'm American, because I don't even feel Japanese. I feel somewhere in between. But I know I'm from Earth and from this planet.
That's the best expression. I'm from the earth. I'm from this planet. The earth is one. The planet is one. So all of these national boundaries that appear to separate one human being from another, soon they will disappear. And people will say just what you said. I'm from the earth. And the earth is one. And when human beings will stop segmenting themselves by pieces of the earth that come in different hues and colors, and begin to see ourselves as extensions of one creator, and we are members of one family, and then the new millennium can be a millennium of peace, as this one has been the most horrendous 1,000-year period in the history of the world. Thank you very much. Well, when you go back to Japan, I pray that God will bless you with a safe journey home, and know that I long for the day
Yes, thank you.
that I can visit
Yes.
Japan and say to the Japanese people, never allow anything to destroy the beauty of your culture. You have much to teach the world, and you should not let corrupt and degenerate cultural expressions destroy the beauty of your culture. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.